I'm gonna try to block this light. What's up, boys? Pretty boring day, but as always, I'm trying to give a little bit more of a realistic view of what training differs like across a full training block, phase to phase. So this is the first week of my hypertrophy phase. Gonna be done with school pretty soon, so I'm hoping to push some really big numbers. Looking to squat somewhere in the mid sevens this block. My knee holds up, joints willing, mid sevens. See if I can get that 545 bench. Just gonna push my conventional pull, see where I can get it to. Not really sure where that's gonna be at. That's the big question mark, but definitely a reasonably high priority for me this block. So hopefully some cool stuff coming. That being said, this is not a cool workout. I'm gonna do my warm-ups. I'm gonna film them for you guys, kind of give you a general gist of what I'm doing before I go into a little session like this and hit 5 sets of 8 on high bar squats. Nothing too heavy yet. My work capacity is garbage, so I'm sure they'll be embarrassingly hard, and that's okay. My work capacity is just ass cheeks right now because I did 585 for a set of 8 in my strength phase last block, and I don't know if we're going to go over 5 today. Probably going to keep it in like the mid 4s. But by the end of this 4-week hypertrophy block, I'm hoping to be hitting a couple of sets of 8, preferably high bar, maybe low bar, over 500. Really lay some foundation, transition to a strength phase, and see if we can hit that 585 or maybe 565 for 10. Some meaningful rep sets in the 600s. Peak out and hit something heavy. After the squats, I will be doing just a little bit of technique work on the pulls, some pauses at the knee. Really light, nothing impressive, but right now I just have to get my technique cleaned up. I think that's what's standing between me and a bigger pull. I'm gonna do a bunch of back extensions, getting a little bit of like hip hinging, so posterior chain hypertrophy. I usually like to get in my volume, my hypertrophy, on something other than deadlifts. Deadlifts tend to cripple me. If I try to do the levels of volume I would need to drive a significant amount of growth. If I did that number of work sets, I would probably end up dying. So I'm using back extensions to supplement so I'm doing some technique work on the dead, and I'm getting the hypertrophy out of the back extension. We'll see how that goes, and then some front planks, and that's my training session. Okay, what's up, boys? Bit of a long voiceover today because I collected clips of a lot of the more minute stuff, as a few of you have requested. So this first video is the standing calf raises I do before every squatting session. I'm holding a 25 up by my chest, and I think I did just like 3 sets of 9. Pretty easy. The most important thing for me is just keeping my ankles moving against resistance through a full range of motion, because as much as I like growing my calves so that they get less small, the primary reason I do these is just to maintain mobile and healthy ankles, because I think people view ankle dorsiflexion in this weird light that's not really justified. If someone came to me saying they had really tight hamstrings and they wanted more mobile hamstrings, I would say that the easiest way to drive lasting change day to day would be to strengthen their hamstrings through a full range of motion. So just do some deep RDLs, build strength in those end ranges, and more than likely, if you have strength in that like deep hip flexion position, then your body will not restrict you from entering it. So much the same, if I want good ankle dorsiflexion, I'm just going to train my plantar flexion through a maximum range of motion, kind of drawing myself down into the rep at the bottom using my tibialis anterior. If you don't know what that is, it's just the muscle in the front of your shin. Not a big deal, but I find that actively drawing yourself down, because I feel like most people know to train full range of motion nowadays, but I think some people just rely on the weight to push them into that end range rather than actively pulling themselves. And I don't really have anything to substantiate this, but I find that it's a little bit easier on my joints if I'm actively pulling myself as opposed to allowing the weight to just pull me into position. And I've found that A, it has resulted in greater calf growth, really trying to actively draw myself down at the bottom, but B, more importantly to my purposes, it has allowed me to keep my ankles a lot healthier. I don't really have to do much dorsiflexion mobility other than that nowadays. After that, I think those went pretty quick, but I did a time lapse of some of the warm-ups I do. I couldn't figure out how to slow those down a little bit, so just in summary of what I did a bunch of shoulder dislocations using a band, and then I did a bunch of behind the neck presses using the band, trying to focus on keeping my hands as close as I can. Good way to get my upper back firing in a pretty relevant position to the squat. Has gone a long way in terms of keeping my shoulders a bit healthier. Then I just supersetted a bunch of bodyweight squats with X-band walks. X-band walks are just kind of an alternative to a hip circle monster walk that you can do with just a band. You just kind of put your feet through it, you make an X with it, and then sidestep a bunch of times. Pretty minimal warm up. Probably took me about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I got under the bar, worked my way up. Just taking enough reps at each weight to get warm, no more, no less. Not really trying to get any work on the way up today because I've got a reasonable number of work sets. So I've been really enjoying the more specific warm-ups, not spending time on these like low scale removed exercises, just really focusing on using the main lifts and variations of the main lift to do the majority of the warming up. So I think I've already shown 405 for 8 was my first work set. 425 for 8 was my second work set. That clip that just ended was 445 for 8 for my third work set. Here is 465 for 8 for my fourth work set. And then I did my final work set at 485 for 8 on beltless, debatably high bar. I have a very hard time with like subconsciously lowering the bar slightly on sets that I think are going to be a little bit more difficult, because my main bar position, my quote low bar position, is, there's no hard lines between them, but I think most people would class it as a mid bar. So I tend to shift my high bar towards my low bar when things get hard without really realizing it. But I'd say I did a good enough job putting it high that I could call this a high bar without anyone bullying me on the internet. Probably moved about how it should. I've got 3 weeks to build to all-time bests, and I think I'll probably want to hit like a couple of sets in the low fives, couple sets of 8. Put on my belt to keep the bar high, and I think that'll put me in a all-time good position to enter a strength block. Moved on to my deadlifts, just doing some technique work, nothing really heavy. I moved my pauses to at the knee rather than pausing off the floor as I have historically, because historically most of my issues arose directly off the floor. But as of recent, and as of talking to some people at my gym, some friends of mine, they've pointed out that the majority of the breakdown in my deadlift nowadays is occurring around the knee rather than off the floor. So I decided I'm early enough in the block, I can call an audible and change the program so that the pauses off the floor that I would be doing today are now at the knee. Very awkward because I've been doing exclusively pauses off the floor for so long. I didn't really get a feel for it the whole day, but this is 425. Usually just leave the hundreds on the bar and just start warming up at 245. Just because I'm already warm from the squats, I don't really need to take a plate, so I can go just straight to the hundreds. Here is 500 pounds for a triple. First rep was abysmal. Second reps were not too bad. Gonna try to build to probably, maybe mid sixes on the pause at the knee. Feels pretty beneficial. Excited to see how it carries over to my main pull. Ended with 5 sets of 15 on back extensions, trying to limit my rest. But by the end, they were getting pretty hard, so I was taking more and more time. Good way to get in some hinging volume for me without excessively taxing my spinal erector.